Welcome to Vibe Podcast Investigates. Today we're investigating Nigel Farage's Clacton property purchase, or supposed lack of. It's a topic researched for us by David Morgan. I'm joined by Charles and Angela. And I'm your host, Alice.
Good to be here, Alice. Charles here, proud member of the Reform Party, and always keen to set the record straight on the brilliant work Nigel Farage is doing for Britain.
Hi, Alice. Angela here, American living in the UK, and honestly, I'm just trying to make sense of British politics. And when it comes to reform, well, let's just say I'm often left scratching my head, wondering what's really going on beneath the surface.
Right then, let's dive straight in. The media research highlights a significant controversy surrounding Nigel Farage's purchase of a four-bedroom house in Clacton, valued at £885,000. It was bought outright, without a mortgage, in November 2024, and is registered solely in the name of his partner, Laurie Ferrari. Charles, what's your initial take on this?
Well, Alice, it's typical, isn't it? The establishment media, always trying to find something to nitpick about Nigel. Here's a successful man, a national treasure, and they're scrutinizing his partner's private property purchase. He's clearly stated he has no financial stake, that it was bought solely by Laurie Ferrari with her own funds. He didn't lend her money, didn't give her money. She comes from a very successful French family. It's all above board, perfectly legal.
Oh, perfectly legal, huh? That's always the go-to line when things start to look a little convenient. £885,000 for a house, paid in cash? That's quite the chunk of change for anyone, let alone someone whose background is suddenly being attributed to a mysterious, very successful French family. In America, we'd be asking for receipts, Charles. That's not nitpicking, that's basic transparency for someone in the public eye.
Angela raises a good point, Charles. The document details that Nigel Farage has said Laurie Ferrari comes from a very successful French family and can afford it herself. However, investigations by the BBC and The Times found no evidence that her parents had the means to provide such a significant cash contribution. Laurie herself previously worked as a waitress and ran a small clothing shop that failed. Her father's haulage business was liquidated in 2020 with more liabilities than assets.
This is precisely the sort of gutter journalism I'm talking about. Digging into a family's personal finances, stretching to paint a picture of impropriety. Laurie Ferrari has a right to her privacy. Just because someone worked as a waitress, or had a business that didn't work out, doesn't mean her family isn't successful or that she can't have financial resources. Successful families often have diverse investments and assets, not just one business. They're French, for goodness sake. Different rules, different investments. This is just an attempt to smear Nigel by proxy.
Smear by proxy? Charles, with all due respect, when you present someone as coming from a very successful French family to explain away an almost £1 million cash purchase, and then all the public evidence points to a waitress, a failed shop, and a father whose business went belly up in debt, well, it doesn't exactly build confidence, does it? That's not gutter journalism, that's just looking at the facts. Most folks back home, or even here, can't just pull that kind of cash out of thin air, no matter how successful their family supposedly is. It just doesn't pass the sniff test.
The research does indicate that the family co-owns a flat valued around £302,000 and former business premises which are rented out. But these are tied up in property and a French company structure, not liquid wealth. The BBC and The Times concluded there was no indication of large cash reserves or recent windfalls. Charles, how do you explain this discrepancy between Farage's statements and the investigative findings?
Look, media outlets can draw whatever conclusions they like based on public records. They don't know the full financial picture of a successful European family. Perhaps there are trusts, other family members, inheritances, or international investments that aren't immediately visible in publicly accessible UK or French company filings. To suggest otherwise is pure speculation. The important thing is that Nigel Farage has been clear, and his spokesperson confirmed all taxes were properly paid.
Oh, all taxes properly paid. I'm sure they were, Charles. But the research also points out that if Mr. Farage had bought it himself, his existing property portfolio would have meant a higher stamp duty rate. So, it just happens to be in his partner's name, saving a pretty penny on taxes. Call me cynical, but that sounds less like ensuring compliance and more like carefully strategizing to minimize a tax bill. It's a tale as old as time, isn't it? The wealthy find ways around things the rest of us just have to grin and bear.
That's an unfair insinuation, Angela. Farage sought specialist legal advice from a taxation king's counsel, and the advice concluded that there was no underpayment of stamp duty land tax and that the transaction was compliant with the law. To suggest it was structured to avoid taxes implies illegality, when in fact, it was simply ensuring compliance with existing regulations. It's quite normal for partners to own property in their own name. This isn't a loophole. It's how the law works.
As of September 2025, the document notes there have been no formal investigations by law enforcement, regulatory bodies, or financial authorities into the purchase. So, while there's public and political scrutiny, no official body has found any wrongdoing.
Keyword there, Alice. Yet, we've seen this movie before, both here and across the pond. Just because there's no official investigation today doesn't mean there's nothing to investigate. When the story about a cash-bought, almost £1 million house involves someone who was a waitress and a family whose businesses weren't exactly booming, it just raises too many red flags. The optics are terrible, and frankly, it looks like a whole lot of smoke and mirrors from the Reform Party, trying to pull a fast one.
Nonsense, Angela. The Reform Party is built on common sense and honesty. Nigel Farage has always been transparent. The fact that no official investigation has been launched after all this media digging just proves there's nothing there. This is a private matter, legally executed, and the constant badgering is just political opportunism from those who fear Nigel's success. He's focused on Clacton, on Britain, and this is just a distraction.
That's all for today. A big thank you to our guest researcher, David Morgan, for providing our topic and our guests Charles and Angela. Don't forget I'm your host Alice, and don't forget to tune in again for another Vibe Podcast Investigates.